Hello, and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Wicked. We are now on part 2, Gillikin. Galinda, part 1. Whittaker, Seneca, Wicca Sand Turning, Red Sand, Dixie House, change at Dixie House for shits. Stay aboard this coach for all points ease. Tennican, Bronx Hall, and all destinations to Trom. The conductor paused to catch his breath. Next stop, Whittaker next. Galinda clutched her parcel close to her breast. The old goat who'd sprawled across the seat from her was missing the Whittaker stop. She was glad that the trains made passengers sleepy. She didn't want to keep avoiding his eye. At last minute before she was to board the train, her minder, Alma Clutch, had stepped on a rusty nail and, terrified of the frozen face syndrome, had begged permission to go to the nearest surgery for medicines and calming spells. I can surely get to myself to shiz alone, Galinda had said coldly. And don't bother with me, Alma Clutch. And Alma Clutch had. Galinda hoped that Alma Clutch would suffer a little frozenness of jaw, being well enough to show up and shiz and chaperone Galinda through whatever was to come. Her own chin was set, she believed, to imply worldly boredom with train travel. In fact, she had never been more than a day's carriage ride away from her family home in the little market town of Frodica. The railway line, laid down a decade ago, had meant the old dairy farms were being cut up for country estates for the merchants and manufacturers of shiz. But Galinda's family continued to prefer rural Gillikin with fox hunts, its dripping spells, its secluded ancient pagans to Lorraine. To them, shiz was a distant urban threat, and even the convenience of rail transportation hadn't been tempted them to risk complications, curiosity, and evil ways. Galinda didn't see the verdant world through the glass of the carriage. She saw that her own reflection instead. She saw the nearsightedness of youth. She reasoned that because she was beautiful, she was significant, though she was signified, and to whom, was not clear yet. The sway of her head made her creamy ringlets swing, catching the light like so many jostling stacks of coins. Her lips were perfect, as pouted as an opening Maya flower, and colored as brilliant as lead. Her green traveling gown, with its inset panels of ochre musset, suggested well, while the black shawl draped just about the shoulders was a nod to her academic inclinations. She was, after all, on her way to shiz because she was smart. But there was more than one way to be smart. She was 17. The whole town of Frodica had seen her off. The first girl from Pertha Hills to be accepted at shiz. She had written well in the entrance exams, a meditation on learning ethics from the natural world. Do flowers regret being plucked for a bouquet? Do the rains practice abstinence? Can animals really choose to become good? Or a moral philosophy of springtime. She had quoted successfully from the Oziad, and her rapturous prose had captivated the board examiners, a 3-year fellowship at Craig Hall. It wasn't one of the better colleges. Those were still close to female students, but it was Shiz University. Her companion in the compartment, waking up when the conductor came through, stretched his heels as he yawned. Would you be so kind as to reach my ticket? It's in the overhead, he said. Galinda stood and found the ticket, aware that the bearded old thing was eyeing her calmly figure. Here you are, she said, and he said, not to me, dearie, to the conductor. Without opposable thumbs, I have no hope of managing to touch such a tiny piece of cardboard. The conductor punched the ticket, and he said, you're the rare beast that can afford to travel first class. Oh, said the goat, I object to the term beast, but the law still allows my traveling in first class, I presume. Money's money, said the conductor without ill will, punching Galinda's ticket and returning to her. No, money is not money, said the goat. Not when my ticket costs double what the young ladies did. In that case, money is a visa. I have to have it. Going to shiz, are you? Said the conductor to Galinda, ignoring the goat's remark. I can tell by the academic shawl. Oh, well, it's something to do, said Galinda. She didn't care to talk to conductors when he continued down the carriage, Galinda found that she liked even less baleful look that the goat was giving her. Do you expect to learn anything at Shiz? He asked. I've already learned not to speak to strangers. Then I will introduce myself, and we will be strangers no longer. I am Dillamond. I am disinclined to know you. I am a fellow of Shiz University, on the Faculty of Biological Arts. You are a shabby dresser, even for a goat, Galinda thought. Money isn't everything. Then I must come my natural shyness. My name is Galinda. I am of the Arjuana clan on my mother's side. Let me be the first to welcome you to Shiz, Galinda. This is your first year? Please, it's Galinda. The proper old Gillikinese pronunciation, if you don't mind. She could not bring herself to call him sir, not with that horrid goatee and that tatty waistcoat that looked like him from some public house carpet. I wonder what you think of the wizard's proposed bans on travel. The goat's eyes were buttery and warm and frightening. Galinda had not heard of any bans. She said as much. Dillamond, was it Dr. Dillamond, explained it in a conversational tone that the wizard had thoughts of restricting animal travel on public conveyances except in designated transports. Galinda replied that animals had always enjoyed separate services. No, I am speaking of animals, said Dillamond. Those were the spirit. Oh, those, said Galinda crudely. Well, I don't see a problem. My, said Dillamond. Don't you indeed? The goatee quivered. He was irritated. He began to hector her about animal rights. As things now stood, his own ancient mother couldn't afford to travel first class and would have to ride in a pen when she wanted to visit him in Shiz. If the wizard's bands went through the Hall of Approval, as they were likely to do, the goat himself would be required by law to give the privileges he had earned through the years of study, training, and saving. Is that right for a creature with a spirit? He said, from here to there to here, in a pen. I quite agree. Travel is so broadening, said Galinda. They endured the rest of the trip, including the change across the platform at Dixie House in frosty silence. Seeing her fright at the size and hustle at the terminus of Shiz, Dillamond took pity and offered to engage a carriage to take her to Crage Hall. She followed him, looking as unmortified as she could manage. Her luggage came behind on the backs of a couple porters. Shiz, she tried not to gawp. Everyone hustling on business, laughing and hurrying, kissing, dodging carriages, while in the buildings of Railway Square, brownstone and bluestone, and covered with vine and moss steamed sunlight. The animals. She had scarcely ever come across even the odd chickens squawking philosophically in Frodica. But here was a quartet of zebras at an outdoor cafe dressed flashily in black and white satin stripes on the bias to their inborn design, and an elephant on the highlights directing traffic, and tiger dressed up in some sort of exotic religious garb, kind of monk or mont or nun or something. Yes, it was the zebras, an elephant, and tiger, and she supposed goat. She would get to use enunciating the capital letters, or else she would show off her country's origins. Mercifully, Dillamond found her in a carriage with a human driver, and directed him to Crage Hall and paid him in advance, for which Galinda had to come up with a weak smile of appreciation. Our paths will cross again, said Dillamond, gallantly, curtly, as if putting forth a prophecy, and he disappeared as the carriage jolted forward. Galinda sank back in the cushion. She began to feel sorry that Alma McClutch had punctured her foot with a nail. Crage was only 20 minutes from Railway Square. Behind its old blue stone walls, the complex was set with large watery glass windows and Lancet information. A tessellation of waterfalls and blind multifolds ran around on the roof line. The appreciation of architecture was Galinda's private passion. She pored over the features she could identify, along the vines and flat much of the finer details of the buildings. Too soon she was whisked inside. The head mistress of Crage Hall, a fish-faced, upper-class guillotine woman wearing a lot of clothes on, bangles, was greeted with new arrivals in the atrium. The head exuded drabness of professional women's dress that Galinda had expected. Instead, the imposing woman was bag-necked in carrot-colored gown with patterns of black swirling over the bodice like dynamic markings on sheet music. "I am Madame Morrible," she said to Galinda. Her voice was basso profundo, her grip crippling, her posture military, her earrings like holiday tree ornaments. Florence was all around, and a quick cup of coffee in the parlor. Then we'll assemble in the maid hall and sort you out as roomies. The parlor was filled with pretty young women, all wearing green or blue and black shawls like exhausting shadows behind them. Galinda was glad for natural advantages of her flaxen hair and stood by a window so the light could dazzle off her curls. She hardly sipped her tea. In a side room, the attendant amas were serving themselves from a metal urn and laughing and yakking already as if they were old friends from the same village. It was somewhat grotesque, all those dumpy women smiling at each other, making marketplace noise. Galinda hadn't read the fine print very closely. She hadn't realized there would be a need for roomies. Or perhaps had her parents paid extra so she could have her private room. And where would Amma Clutch stay? Looking at her, she could tell some of these dollies came from families better off than hers. The pearls and diamonds on them. Galinda was glad she had chosen a simple silver cover with Medina struts. There was something vulgar about traveling in jewels. As she realized this truth, she codified it into saying, as the early perfect opportunity, she would bring it out the proof of her having opinions and of having traveled. The overdressed traveler betrays more interest in being seen than in seeing, she murmured, trying it out, while the one true traveler knows that one novel would about her serves as the most appropriate necessary. Good, very good. Madame Morrible accounted, heads gripping a cup of tea, and shooed everyone in the main hall. There, Galinda learned that allowing Amma Clutch to go looking for a sugary had been a colossal mistake. Apparently all the chattering Ammas hadn't been frivolous and social. They'd been instructed to sort out among those whose lady would room with whose. The Ammas had been relied upon to get the nub of the matter more quickly than the students themselves. No one had spoken up for Galinda. She had gone unrepresented. After the forgettable welcome remarks, as coupled by the students and Ammas let to locate their lodgings and settle in, Galinda found herself growing with embarrassment. Amma Clutch, the old fool, would mix her up with nicely just a notch or two above on the social ladder. Nearly, Galinda would suffer no shame, and above it, fit enough to make the mark of socializing. But now, all the better young misses were linked together, diamond to diamond, emerald to emerald, for all she could tell. As the room began to empty, Galinda wondered if she hadn't gone and interrupt Madame Morrible and explain the problem. Galinda, after all, was an Arduna of the uplands, at least on one side. It was a hideous accident. Her eyes teared up, but she hadn't the nerve. She stayed perched on the edge of the fragile, stupid chair. Except for her, all the center of the room had cleared now. The shyer, more useless girls were on the left, around the edges in the shadows. Surrounded by the obstacles of empty gilded chairs, Galinda alone sat like an unclaimed valise. Now the rest of you are here without Ammas, I understand, said Madame Morrible a bit sniffily. Since we shall be required chaperonage, I will assign each of you one of those 3 dormitories for freshers which sleep 15 girls each. There's no social stigma in the dormitory, I might add, none at all. But she was lying, and not even convincingly. Galinda finally stood up. Please, Madame Morrible, there is a mistake. I am Galinda of the Ardunias. My Amma took a nail in the foot on the way voyage and was detained for a day or 2. I am not in the dormitory class, you can see. How sad for you, said Madame Morrible, smiling. I'm sure your Amma will be pleased to be a chaperone in, shall we say, The pink dormitory, 4th floor on the right. No, she would not, interrupted Galinda quite bravely. I am not here to sleep in a dormitory, pink or otherwise. You have misunderstood. I have not misunderstood, Miss Galinda, said Madame Moore, growing even more fish-like as her eyes began to bulge. There was an accident. There is tardiness. There are decisions to be made. As you are not equipped through your Amma to make your own decision, I am empowering to make one for you. Please, we are busy, and I must name the other girls who will join you in the pink dormitory. I would like a private word with you, madam, said Galinda in desperation. For my sub-dormitory partners are in a single room. It is no matter. But I cannot recommend that you ask my Amma to oversee other girls for reasons I may not say in public. She was lying as fast as she could, and better than Madame Morble, who seemed at least intrigued. You strike me as impertinent, Miss Galinda, she said mildly. I have not yet struck you, Madame Morble, Galinda delivered the daring line with her streetish smile. Madame Morble chose to laugh, thanked Lorraine. A spark of smoke. You may have come to my chambers this evening and tell me the story of your Amma's shortcomings, as I should know them, but I will compromise with you, Miss Galinda. Unless you object, I will ask your Amma to chaperone both you and another girl, one who comes out without an Amma. For all you see, all the other students with Ammas are ready to be paired off, and you are the honored one out. I am certain my Amma can manage that at least. Madame Morble scanned the page of names. She said, Very well. To join Miss Galinda of the Ardunias in the double room, shall I invite the third descending of Nest Harding's, Elphaba? No one stirred. Elphaba? Said Madame Moore again, adjusting her bangles and pressing 2 fingers at the bottom of her throat. The girl in the back room, a pauper in a red dress with gaudy fretwork and in clumpy old people's boots. At first Galinda thought she saw some trick of the light, a reflection off the adjacent buildings covered in vines and flat moss. But as Galinda moved forward, lugging her own carpet, but as Elphaba moved forward, lugging her own carpet bag, it became obvious that she was green. A hatchet-faced girl with protrusive green skin and long, foreign-looking black hair. A munchkin landed by birth, though with many childhood years spent in Quadling country, read Madame Morble from her notes. How fascinating for us all, Miss Elphaba. We shall look forward to hearing tales of exotic climes and times. Miss Galinda and Miss Elphaba, here are your keys to take room 22 on the 2nd floor. She smiled broadly at Galinda as the girls came floors. Travel is so broadening, she eyed home. Galinda started, with the curse of her own words loud back at her. She curtsied and fled. Elphaba, eyes on the floor, followed behind. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.